I don't have to think about it. I've lived it. I've been the guy at the Oscars without my name being called.
After years of back-to-back awards and recognition for his amazing on-screen performance and contributions to Hollywood, just when we least expected, Denzel Washington has said what no one thought he would ever say about the Oscars. While fans are in disbelief, his colleagues are in disunity, and the Academy itself remains silent. The whispers across Hollywood continue to be louder than ever because of his revelations.
One of the first awards, Sean Connery. So he comes out, standing ovation, like 2 minutes.
These aren't the complaints of some bitter actor past his prime. No. Coming from Washington, a man who has stood tall through every season of Hollywood, a man who knows the game better than almost anyone alive, these revelations cut deep and threaten to change how we see the Oscars forever. They're not whispers, they're facts. What exactly did a two-time Oscar winner reveal about the Academy's most coveted prize? What drove him to break his silence after all these years? Was it resentment, a warning, or a truth too heavy to keep buried any longer? How deep do these revelations run? If you want to know all the details, then this video is a must-watch to the very end. From the hidden secrets to the inside dramas and toxic politics played within the Oscar, Washington spills it all in this video. But let's first start by taking a rewind to the history of the Oscars. The Academy Awards, more famously known as the Oscars, began not as a glamorous night of stars and golden trophies, but as a solution to a problem. In the late 1920s, Hollywood was expanding rapidly. Silent films were giving way to sound, studios were growing in power, and actors were transforming into larger-than-life celebrities. But beneath the glitter, there was turmoil. Rising labor disputes, growing demands for fair wages, and tensions between powerful studio executives and the creative talent that brought films to life. It was in this atmosphere that Louis B. Mayer, the head of MGM, came up with an idea. He wanted an organization that would unify the film industry, bringing together directors, writers, producers, and actors under one umbrella. But more importantly, he wanted something that could control labor disputes while projecting an image of unity and prestige. And so, in 1927, the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences was born. At first, the Academy was less about awards and more about smoothing conflicts. But very quickly, the idea of honoring outstanding achievements in film took shape. The first Academy Awards ceremony was held in 1929 at the Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel. There were no live broadcasts, no paparazzi, no dramatic envelopes, and no dazzling gowns and tuxedos. Just a private dinner with around 270 people in attendance. The winners had been announced in advance, and the ceremony itself lasted just 15 minutes. The golden statuette, now known as the Oscar, became the symbol of the ceremony. Designed by Cedric Gibbons and sculpted by George Stanley, it was a knight holding a sword, standing on a reel of film. Over the years, what began as a small, controlled gathering grew into the most prestigious and watched awards show in the world. A night that could make or break careers in the view of Washington. Now, let's get into the interesting part. During a recent interview with Jakes Hamilton of Jake's Takes magazine, Washington spilled that he doesn't do movies for the Oscars. Even though that statement was weird coming from a two-time Oscars winner, the next statement he made was the actual bombshell.
Care about that kind of stuff. You know, I've been at this a long time, and there are times when
Washington's statement was candid and unapologetic. He didn't care about the Oscars. While others found it offensive to refer to the revered Oscars as mere stuff, most people knew that this one statement meant so many things. But most importantly, it meant that the Oscars was of no importance to Washington, and his reasons are chilling.
Grew up in, like I said, in the boys' club. That's what I would have been doing, I'm sure, if I wasn't.
The glittering illusion. For the world watching from home, the Oscars is the peak of glamour. Flashing cameras, designer clothes, and golden statues held high in triumph. But to Washington, the image is nothing more than what he calls a glittering illusion. A dazzling mask hiding a brutal game of competition that eats actors alive. Washington, a man who has weathered every storm Hollywood could throw, has seen the Oscars up close for many years at that. And behind the red carpets, he says, it isn't celebration that drives the night. It's a rivalry. On a typical Oscar night, the stars are seated, the lights dim, and the announcer's voice booms across the room. But beneath the polished smiles, Washington insists. The tension is suffocating. Everybody in that audience is measuring themselves against the other. Every nod, every forced laugh at a rival's joke is part of a silent war. To win is to ascend. To lose is to fade into whispers. Washington describes the ceremony as less about honoring art and more about crowning combatants. The nominations, he says, pit friends against friends. turning colleagues into adversaries. What looks like camaraderie to the public is, in his words, a room full of knives hidden behind tuxedos and gowns. He recalled Oscar nights where nominees clutched their partner's hands so tightly you could see the knuckles whiten. Not out of romance, but desperation. Because once your name is read, everything changes. A win cements your place in history. A loss leaves you in the shadows, your work reduced to a polite applause that lasts only seconds before being forgotten. And Washington's point is chilling. The Academy has designed it this way. The glitter and gold are there to distract, to convince the public that this is celebration. But in reality, it's a high-stakes competition where even legends walk away feeling diminished. Washington opened up about the bittersweet nature of his Oscar wins and nominations. Despite taking home 2 Academy Awards, he's been nicknamed an Oscar snub due to his 8 other nominations that didn't result in wins.
Yeah, I don't know if I told this story before. I stole a shrimp once.
You stole what?
Yeah, one time I didn't win, and I was passing catering on the way out.
Washington admitted that losing 8 times was tough, joking about a rather unclassy coping mechanism in which he had to swipe a plate of shrimp into his pocket on his way out of the Oscars after losing. He recalls one year when a close friend confided in him backstage, devastated by a loss. The performance had been career-defining, the reviews glowing. Yet when the envelope was opened, another name was called. As Washington tells it, his friend whispered, "All those months of my life, and it wasn't enough." That moment, he said, was when he realized how destructive the Oscars could be. In his eyes, the Academy thrives on this rivalry. The cameras pan to the losers, capturing their forced smiles, their attempts at grace, while their dreams are shattered in real time. Those images are broadcast worldwide, immortalized as proof of defeat, and audiences eat it up. The glamour, the heartbreak, the illusion that this is the pinnacle of success. Washington's critique cuts deeper when he points out how this competition warps the art itself. Creatives begin to choose roles not for their soul, but for their chances. Directors adjust stories to fit the mold of Oscar bait. What should be a celebration of storytelling becomes a chess match of strategy and sacrifice. To Washington, the irony is cruel. The very event meant to honor artistry often destroys it, replacing passion with calculation. And the golden statue, that shining symbol of achievement, becomes less a reward and more a weapon, used to separate winners from losers in an industry already steeped in ego. That's why when Washington declared he no longer cares about the Oscars, it was more than a statement. It was a verdict, a rejection of the illusion. He pulled back the curtain and showed the world that the glamour we idolize is built on rivalry, insecurity, and toxic competition. Politics over talent. In Washington's eyes, the deepest flaw of the Oscars is not the glamour, not the spectacle, but the system that drives it. Behind every acceptance speech, every gold statue raised to the heavens, there is a truth he finds impossible to ignore. Talent alone does not decide the outcome. Politics does. Washington has spent decades in Hollywood, long enough to see the pattern repeat itself year after year. Performances that moved audiences to tears, roles that critics hailed as extraordinary, somehow ended up empty-handed. Meanwhile, other far less remarkable works were crowned with golden statues. The explanation, he says, is not hidden in the artistry of the films, but in the power of the campaigns that back them. The weeks leading to the Oscars are not simply a celebration of film, they are a campaign season. Studios hire strategists whose job is not to honor talent, but to win trophies. Lavish dinners are organized for Academy members. Exclusive screenings are paired with champagne receptions. Branded gift baskets worth thousands of dollars arrive at voters' doors. Magazines suddenly overflow with glowing articles about certain actors. It is not a coincidence. It is a calculated push, orchestrated with precision, designed to plant names in voters' minds until they can no longer be ignored. Washington remembers a particular season that exposed the game for what it truly was. 2 actors were leading the race. One delivered a performance so powerful that critics declared it a once-in-a-generation role. The other, though skilled, delivered work that by all accounts was respectable but not transformative. Yet when the envelope was opened on Oscar night, it was the second name that echoed through the theater. The deciding factor wasn't artistry. It was the millions poured into dinners, promotions, and quiet lobbying by a studio determined to win at any cost. For Washington, this was no isolated incident. It was a reflection of how deeply politics had replaced talent as the true currency of the Academy. Actors become pieces on a chessboard, moved strategically by the hands of producers and executives, The illusion of meritocracy collapses under the weight of backroom negotiations and whispered promises. The Academy's politics stretch beyond individual campaigns. Washington points to moments when winners were chosen not for their art, but for what their victories symbolized. A year of controversy about diversity suddenly resulted in inclusive wins. These victories, though celebrated publicly, were less about the year's greatest performances and more about repairing reputations. It was not progress, Washington insists, but public relations dressed up as progress. And when image replaces merit, the true purpose of honoring artistry is lost. He recalls conversations with young actors who poured their souls into performances, believing excellence alone would be enough. They gave everything, sacrificing time, energy, and even their health for roles that critics adored. Yet when nominations were announced, their names were absent. The quiet explanation offered to them was brutal. They lacked the campaign to push them forward. For Washington, hearing those words was devastating because it proved that passion and dedication were powerless against the machinery of influence. The Oscars, he argues, thrive on this imbalance. The spectacle of the night distracts from the politics that decided it long before. Cameras captured tears, gasps, and joyous embraces. But what the world never sees are the quiet deals struck behind closed doors. A director promising to support a voter's project in exchange for backing, a producer leveraging future blockbusters to secure today's trophy, powerful agencies throwing their weight behind clients, ensuring their names dominate every headline. These machinations are invisible to the public, yet they shape the very outcomes celebrated on stage. Washington's frustration deepens when he speaks about how this system corrodes the art itself. Actors and directors, aware of what the Academy favors, begin to shape their work not for authenticity but for strategy. Scripts are chosen based on their Oscar potential rather than their heart. Stories are adjusted to fit predictable molds that voters respond to. What should be creativity becomes calculation. What should be soul becomes statistics. The irony, Washington says, is cruel. The Oscars were created to celebrate artistry, but in practice, they often suffocate it. The golden statue that should symbolize triumph becomes a symbol of compromise, influence, and carefully engineered campaigns. So when Washington declares that he does not care about the Oscars, he is not dismissing recognition itself. He is exposing the system that cheapens it. He is rejecting the illusion that a statue automatically defines greatness. For him, greatness lives in the work, in the stories told with honesty, in the lives touched by performance, not in a competition where politics sits on the throne and talent bows its head. His words cut like a verdict. The Oscars no longer crown the best. They crown the most connected, the most strategic, the most powerful. And until that changes, the celebration remains hollow, a glittering stage built not on artistry, but on politics dressed as glory.
People with what you say and hoping that you do, it's intimidating.
More than just competition, ignored talent in politics, Washington cites obsession for power as another reason why he attributes no importance to the Oscars. With power comes hidden agendas that twist the very fabric of Hollywood's most celebrated night. To him, the ceremony is less a recognition of art and more a battleground where careers are elevated, destroyed, or strategically controlled by forces far beyond the public eye. Washington has long observed that the Academy is not neutral ground. It is a stage where industry titans pull strings, ensuring outcomes that align with their interests. The winners the world applauds often symbolize victories for the powerful, while the losers are frequently casualties of invisible wars. One of the clearest examples is the way studios weaponize Oscar campaigns to secure dominance in the market. Washington recalls how Harvey Weinstein, once dubbed the Oscar King, mastered this manipulation in the 1990s and 2000s. Weinstein didn't just campaign, he was strong-armed. Whisper Networks described him as relentless, deploying smear tactics against rival films, planning stories to weaken competitors, and using sheer intimidation to secure wins for Miramax projects. The results were undeniable. Shakespeare in Love famously defeated Saving Private Ryan in 1999. A victory many critics still argue was engineered by Weinstein's ruthless campaigning rather than artistic merit. But the games extend beyond studios. Washington has noted how actors themselves can become pawns in rivalries that stretch across years. Behind closed doors, alliances form and dissolve. One year, an actor may find themselves celebrated by Academy members eager to appear supportive. The next, the same performer may be shunned for political reasons, overlooked because supporting them would threaten another, more powerful interest. Washington suggests that this invisible punishment is why certain critically celebrated performances disappear from award season chatter altogether. The hidden agendas he argues, are not only about money, but about influence and control. A powerful agency may push their entire roster of clients forward, ensuring nominations are clustered around their actors while freezing out competitors. The Academy, rather than resisting, bends under the weight of these empires. For Washington, it becomes painfully clear. The Oscars are not a pure reflection of talent. They are an ecosystem carefully curated by the most influential voices in Hollywood. And sometimes, the games turn brutal. Washington recalls stories of actors whose careers were quietly sabotaged after refusing to play along. Blacklisting may no longer be an official practice, but in Washington's words, it still thrives in quieter, more insidious ways. An actor who challenges the system may suddenly find fewer scripts crossing their desk. Directors who once championed them might retreat, fearful of risking their own chances. Their names may even vanish from Oscar chatter, no matter how strong the performance. One chilling example Washington often points to is how studios rally to protect their image. When Roman Polanski won Best Director in 2003 for The Pianist, despite his well-documented legal controversies, it was not just about his film. It was about powerful figures circling the wagons, ensuring one of their own was shielded and celebrated. Meanwhile, lesser-connected directors with equally strong films were overlooked. The message was unmistakable. Power shields its own, while those without it are expendable. Washington also highlights the way media outlets become willing participants in these games. Trade magazines, long seen as tastemakers during awards season, often publish glowing profiles or biting critiques not out of journalistic integrity, but out of pressure from studios or agencies funding advertisements. What the public reads as organic praise or criticism is frequently another piece of the puzzle, designed to guide voters toward certain acceptable choices. The Academy thrives on maintaining the illusion of impartiality, but Washington insists the truth is impossible to ignore once you've lived inside the machine. Power decides narratives. Power creates winners, and hidden agendas ensure that the Oscars serve as much more than a celebration of art. They are, in his words, Hollywood's grand stage for politics, punishment, and control. For Washington, this realization is what makes the Oscars so hollow. The statues may shine, but they are often built on backroom deals, whispered promises, and ruthless strategies that the public never sees. The power games are not the exception. They are the rule, and until the curtain is pulled back completely, the Oscars will remain less a measure of greatness and more a reflection of who held the strongest cards behind the scenes.
Thought I'd become a lawyer. Then I started studying journalism. I think I was working my way toward the arts.
While on it, Washington made it clear that even speaking up against the Oscars is not without consequence. In Hollywood, silence is rewarded, but speaking out comes at a steep cost. The industry thrives on appearances, the illusion of unity, the gloss of glamour, and anyone who tears through that facade risks exile. Washington knows this better than most. For years, he has seen how actors who dared to criticize the Academy were quietly pushed to the margins. Their phone calls went unanswered. Scripts they once would have received were suddenly not available. Directors who had championed them in the past kept their distance, wary of damaging their own prospects. The punishment was subtle, but the message was clear. Challenge the system, the Oscars, and you will pay. The Academy, he argues, relies on this fear to maintain its hold. If actors believe their careers depend on nominations and wins, then they will play along. They will campaign, flatter, and smile even when their souls feel bruised. But Washington's defiance shatters this dynamic. By saying he doesn't care, he strips the Academy of its leverage. He refuses to be controlled by a golden statue, and in doing so, he exposes the Academy's greatest weakness, its dependence on belief. Yet even for Washington, the cost is real. He knows his words make enemies. He knows they will be twisted, used against him, or quietly punished by the same circles he criticizes. But his resolve is firm. To him, truth matters more than trophies. And that is where his revelation cuts deepest. The Oscars, once the ultimate dream for actors, now stand revealed as a flawed, politicized machine. Washington's voice forces the world to confront an uncomfortable question. If Hollywood's brightest star no longer believes in the Academy, why should anyone else? Well, the glamour of Oscar night will continue. The lights will shine, the cameras will roll, and golden statues will be raised high. But to Washington, audiences should know the truth lurking behind the glitter. The Oscars are not just about celebrating art, they are about competition, politics, power, and control. And so, when Washington says he no longer cares, it is not a dismissal of recognition. It is a declaration of independence, one no one has dared to openly speak about. Let's know your thoughts in the comments section. Subscribe to this channel for more videos like this, like and share.